welcome to our mixed media class today. Today we're going to do a double layout using a little bit of a different technique with texture paste today. I'm using the Couture Creations Gift of Giving pack today. Excuse me. I'm using the 6x6 pack and the Ephemera pack and the Sentiments Ephemera pack. So I've already chosen what I'm going to add on. I've also done all my pre-preps, so you don't have to sit here and watch me cut anything out or do anything like that. We're going to make 2 pages, so we'll work on one at a time obviously, but you can add a photo on later if you want to. You can use whatever ephemera pack or papers you have if you don't want to do Christmas. So let's get started. So the first thing we're going to do is our texture paste. So I'm just using 12x12 smooth white cardstock and a white texture paste. So you will need your heat gun as well for this, and you need a background sort of stencil that you want to use. I don't have a Christmassy one, so I'm just using a good old favourite. So all I'm going to do is put my texture paste on. I'm not going to do the whole stencil, but I'm going to go to the edge and sort of go down on an angle across the page. And this is a good stencil too, because you can move it across and line it up a lot easier than some of the other ones that you can get out there. So this one I've had for quite a while. So I'm happy with that part. So what I'm going to do is move it across, line it up, and then hold that corner up so it doesn't flatten where I've already done. And then continue on. Need to be careful that you don't move it though while you're doing the second part. Can be a bit hard sometimes, but you do get used to it. And your texture paste sometimes holds it down as well once you get it moving. Okay. So I'm happy with that. I'm just going to put my texture paste and everything aside for a second. I'm just going to give this a quick clean because I don't want the texture paste to dry on it. And then I'll be back. Okay, so I have given my stencil a quick clean just with a baby wipe because we are going to use it again in a minute. Just need to make sure there's no wet texture paste on the surface you're working on. No putting your paper down on wet spots. Let's just give that a quick clean off. And then you'll need your scrap piece of paper. So make sure everything's dry underneath. I'm going to use the Distress Glaze this time, the new Crackling Campfire. All I'm going to do while my texture paste is wet is sprinkle it on top of my texture paste. Probably go through quite a bit during this part of it, but you can put it all back into the jar once we're done. So I'm just making sure that the bulk of my texture paste is covered. There we go. So you need to do this while your texture paste is still wet. Okay, give it a bit of a tap around. Hold it so it doesn't all go everywhere and onto your scrap piece of paper. Just give it a bit of a tap to get all the excess off. Just put that aside for a second so you can clean up. And then you can heat it up. It does take a little bit of extra time to do, but you'll see the magic happen. Just make sure you wipe off any parts you don't want texture paste on. So I'm just going to heat that up and get it moving, and then I will be back. Alright, so I've done both of my pages, so I've stenciled them and done the heat embossing on them. Just a couple of tips when you are heat embossing onto texture paste. You need to remember that texture paste will bubble if you get the heat gun too close or leave it on the same spot for too long. So you need to just keep an eye on that. And you can also heat embossing powder or melt it time and time again. So if you find that some of the parts of your stencil have got dried with little bubbles in them, you can actually go back over it and take those bubbles out. But I've still got a few little parts that have the bubbles in there. I'm not worried because we are going to cover some of it over. I've stenciled so as they sort of match up and go the opposite direction across the page, but you can also, I'm not sure if you can see, but on the edge here I've overheated it just a touch too much and the texture paste has bubbled, but it just all adds to it. It's just something to be mindful of, especially when you're working with the heat embossing on texture paste. So I'm going to put one of those aside now and work on one side of the layout. Let's get rid of that mat. Okay. Alright, so on this one I'm going to put, everything's covered in embossing powder. I'm going to use one of my papers from the 6.5 by 6.5, I think it is. So I've just chosen which one I want as a base, and I've pretty much just cut it in half. So I'm just going to layer it. One's going to go on with double-sided tape, the other one I'm going to use foam tape to raise it up, and then I'm going to layer my ephemera around it. So I'm just going to stick those on. So the bottom one, as I said, is double-sided tape. Going to make sure that's up the right way. Just going to roughly put it where I think, roughly there's where I want it. Probably not straight, but that's okay. Nothing ever is when I put it on. So this one I'm going to put on using foam tape. I've run out of tape, so I'm just going to use a strip. Just going to add some in the middle as well to give it a bit of support. You can buy these strips in packs. So I'm not going right to the edge, that's just because I don't want the foam tape to be seen. So just adding some through the middle as well, just to give it some support. So I'm just going to attach that one on. And also, by not putting the tape right to the side, it gives me a chance to layer things underneath as well. So I've already picked out what I want to put on. So I'm going to add on a poinsettia. Just going to use double-sided tape for this one. I'm going to add this one, I think, under there. So I'm just going to put a little bit of double-sided tape on there, under there like that. So now I'm going to look at my other pieces. So I might put Santa here, so he's going to need some foam tape underneath him. Just make sure I put it on the right side, and a little bit of double-sided tape on the other side. So these are going to sit under there like that. Add some foam tape on the back. Yeah, put it on an angle. Sort of need to make sure everything sort of joins up so it flows better across the page. So I'm gonna maybe put that in under there. I might put a little bit of foam underneath. The more you think about things like this, sometimes the longer it takes, and then you don't end up being completely happy and all that. Sometimes I find it's just easier to go straight in. You don't have to add as much foam tape in as what I'm doing, but I like to have layers that are higher and layers that aren't. Sometimes you can end up with a lot of height in your pages with the amount of foam tape, so we're trying to avoid going too high. So that all pieces that I've put on are actually touching each other, so they flow a lot more. I think that'll about do. Quite happy with that. Can add a photo on. I'm not going to add one on today, but you can add another photo on. You could add on a photo mat, just so you know if you haven't got a photo that you want to put on there yet. And then you can add it later. So we're going to work on the second page now. We still haven't finished with the first, but we'll do one last step before we finish. So this time I'm using some cards out of the Ephemera pack. They're all covered in embossing powder as well. So I'm going to have maybe that one in the middle and that one sitting to the side. So I'm going to put this one on double-sided tape. And the other one, this one, onto foam tape. I've also got a little tag here that I'm going to add in. So that one will be on double-sided tape as well, I think, and then we'll start layering up everything else. So I'm just going to add a little bit of foam in the middle as well, again just to give it a little bit more support. I don't worry too much about putting tape across the whole back. It's not going to be pulled in and out of an album or anything too much, so let's see, with this little one I might put him in under there. And of course you can add another small photo up here or somewhere as well if you wanted to. Okay, so the last thing we need to do is a little bit of splatter. I've got a distressed mica spray It's tarnished brass, so I'm going to get my splatter box and put a little bit of that on. Okay, I don't want any splatter on Santa's face, so I've just put a little bit of paper towel over him. So all I'm going to do is just use the spray, but just the end of the thing. Quite happy with that, so I'm just going to change over and get my next one. So this is my first page that we did, so I'm just going to do the same. I've covered Santa's face as well. So the tarnished brass mica spray is a goldy sort of spray, but it's a gold spray, but it's not as bright a gold as what you normally get. So it's more of a antique-y sort of gold. And I love splatter, so the more the more that goes on, the better. So you can put as much or as little as you like. And that. And there's our layouts. So two different looks, but using the same technique, just different colours. So all you need to do is remember to dab off the mica powder from your embossing, because it won't actually dry on there. So I hope you enjoyed that today, and thank you again for joining me, and I hope to see you in another class soon.